Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. This is a turning point. We finished his book, and he's got some fresh material for us tonight. So hopefully you find it interesting. Make sure you like the video out there. Feel free to share it on social media. Appreciate everybody joining in. We're joined in our Zoom meeting by our friends Ronald and Rabbi as well, and always good to have them with us. So let's just jump right in and say hello. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. So good to be with you. We're going to turn the class over to you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Hello, everybody. And as Dan said, we're going to start something new. And so I'm going to give you an introduction. I'm going to first display it. And this says, on the screen, you should say Mishnah Torah. What's this? I don't know what happened there. Here we go. Mishnah Torah, Rambam, Gives to the Poor, Chapter 7. Presentation brought by Shlomo Schwartz in memory of my father, Zev Yosef ben Yitzchak, although Shalom on a blessed memory. So when my father passed away, we tried to, young, I wanted to commemorate his memory with some, he was very proud that I become a rabbinical student, and I wanted to do something in his memory. And his character was, he was a very likable fellow. He did a lot of favors for people. He was very kind and to others, and had a lot of friends. Didn't have a lot of money, but he had a lot of friends. And so I looked to do something along the laws of friendship and doing favors for people. I couldn't find anything really. Many years later, I found something, but I was looking. The Rambam certainly doesn't have any extended piece on that, but it does have on the poor. So that's going out to other people. So I decided to present that. And it started with just a service I would perform in memory of my father. And so now I'll describe that, Hashem gave us the Torah, and in the Torah we have various verses that instruct us how to behave. And along with those verses came a whole oral instruction on how to explain that, how to fill up the gaps. Just like when you go to university, you have a professor, you have a textbook, but you need a professor to explain how everything works and so on. Otherwise, you're not going to learn how to do it very well. And that was the way, when the Torah was given, that was the model for centuries. You were not allowed to write down the oral teachings. There was no Coles notes, no crib notes. You had the text, that's a given. You have to be very careful to have the correct text. But as far as the oral teaching, you have to go to an authorized teacher, a rabbi, someone who had a degree, a certification that they knew what they were talking about, study from them, and then you get the whole picture. And when you got good enough, they'd give you the degree and you go and give it to other people. So this went on for centuries until it came time that they were starting to forget the content, and they decided that they had to start writing it down, just otherwise they were going to lose it. So they wrote it down in very brief fashion, and the fellow that wrote it down, Rabbi Yehuda, actually introduced a whole new curriculum because reorganized the material. I imagine till then they just read the written word, the Torah, and then they had all kinds of discussions that springboarded from the verse. It might have been on the topic at hand, or it might have been a strange sounding word, or it might have been a story that goes along that led into another story that led into another story. It went all over the place, and that's the way people are. They talk and somebody mentions something, and it starts a whole new discussion. It was very organic, very natural, and that's the way it was given over. He tried to organize it into subject matter, but he wanted to retain that give and take, that oral nature of it. So he wrote very briefly, number one, and number two, he jumped from topic to topic as things came up. So that lasted for a couple of centuries until Rambam came along, and he sought to reorganize it in a logical manner. And so he wrote Mishnah Torah, which means the second Torah, this the replication of the Torah. So he took all the subject matter, reorganized it into 14 books, and presented it. And no one else has tried to replicate that feat. Subsequent to the Rambam, 100, 200 years later, they started writing other books that were more practical. First of all, they omitted all the um, extinct instructions, because more than half of the 613 instructions in the Torah dealt with the temple and its service, which was no longer there. They lost the temple. They were in exile. So that was gone. So they dropped all that stuff and they concentrated on the stuff that remained and tried to present it to more of the layman. Here's how you go as you go through your daily routines. So again, a different curriculum, a different order of presentation. I like the Rambam because of the logical structure that he invented, and everybody else likes him too. And they lifted his writing was also beautifully clear, beautifully lucid. And so I think we'll show you as we go through that people just lifted his words, but they reordered, put it in different order as they felt necessary. So the reason I'm telling you all this is to introduce Rambam's presentation of the um, instruction to give charity, and I'm going to juxtapose with that. My idea was the gift I thought a service I thought I'd provide would be is I'll take the Rambam, which everybody had, but what Rambam didn't do was say where he got it from. So I researched. There's tools you can use and find out the earlier source, which would be the Talmud, the Rabbi Yehuda, that the first writing down of the oral instruction. So that's called the Talmud, and it's studied to this day. But it's, again, like I said, all over the map. So you have to go searching for where are these discussions held there, and then see what the Rambam did with that. So first I present the Rambam because he's the logical flow, and then I go back and say, well, where did he get it from? And then I want to show how that developed into the next stage of the it's called the Shulchan Aruch, the prepared table, how that developed into, which is the book that everybody consults, and here's how I should behave because it's more practical. So that's what I thought I would do. Just bring the piece together. And again, because the order is reordered after the Rambam, so it's another job to go find where it's down in where Rambam's orderly presentation is copied down in the Shulchan Aruch. So that was the service I thought I'd provide. As I collected these things and put them together and looked at them, I started this. I was amazed. The questions just popped up. Is what is the Rambam? Why did he put it this way? What and why did they change this? And why did they change that? And what did he? How did he? Why did he extract this from the Talmud and not the other thing from the Talmud? And so on. And so then I just started analyzing it and giving reasons. And I wrote them all down, and that became a little booklet consisting of those. So 4 steps, I guess. The Rambam is the centerpiece. The first thing I try to do is present the Talmud that supports him. The next thing I do is present the Shulchan Aruch, the prepared table that succeeded him, and then my notes to try to bring it all together. And I thought that, so it's an analysis of the instructions on how to perform 2 mitzvahs. We'll see there's 2 mitzvahs of charity. And they pertain to everybody, as I've gone through in the book, that I think they're applicable to everybody. Everybody does give charity, and this will help you do it with more determination and more wisdom and more accomplishment. So, paragraph 1 in the Rambam is, it is a positive mitzvah to give charity to the poor according to the needs of each pauper, provided that the giver has ample means to satisfy those needs, as stated. And he brings 3 verses. The first one is, you shall surely open your hand to him. That's in Deuteronomy 15:8. And another verse in Leviticus, you shall strengthen with it the hand of the stranger and the sojourner, that he may live with you. And the verse after that, your brother shall be sustained with you. So this one's talking about the stranger and the sojourner. Now your brother shall be staying with you. So Rambam saying all these verses are telling us to give charity, to help those that don't have. Paragraph 2, moreover, whoever sees a pauper requesting aid and averts his attention from him so as not to give him charity, transgresses a negative mitzvah as stated, do not harden your heart, do not close your hand from your impoverished brother. And that's in Deuteronomy 15:7. I'll just point out that the first verse we have is 15:8. This is 15:7. So one question we can ask ourselves is, well, since the negative came first, why did the Rambam present, obviously these other verses are in Leviticus, that's the third book, this is Deuteronomy, the fifth book. So for some, yeah, let me just finish the statement. So for some reason, he's going first to the fifth book, and then he's coming back to the third, and here, this one came first. Okay, what's your question?
Well, Rabbi, I've got a little brother. He's about 4 years younger than me, and
Huh?
he has a terrible tendency of treating my bank account as his accessible funds. And I've had to stand him up and say, no.
Right,
And, because he just never pays anything back, and he's always, working himself into that position. The
right,
point being is do not harden your heart and do not close your hand from your impoverished brother. I
right.
mean, is there not a sound line where no is
A great
fully
question.
acceptable?
A great question. Wait, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. These are all the questions that come up as you read the words. It sounds so simple, charity. But then you get all these. Life has all these details about it. Oh, sure. So we're going to get into that very shortly. Those kinds of issues. But what I'm just pointing out here is that Rambam decided to start with a positive rather than negative, even though in the main verse, the negative came first. Now, why would he do that? Why did he just follow the verses? Um, do you have any? Uh, can you think of any reason why he would start with the positive? Any precedent? In other words, you can make up reasons, but is there a precedent for him starting with the positive? So it's an interesting feature that I don't know if you're familiar, but the Ten Commandments, everybody thinks they know them, but I was surprised to learn that there's a major difference in the Ten Commandments between the Jewish version and the Christian version, which became the more well-known version just because of the numbers. And that is that in the Christian version, they start with "Do not have any other gods before me." The actual Ten Commandments starts off with "I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt." Um, that's how it starts off. We take that as the first command, as the first instruction to know God, even though it doesn't. There's no instructive word. There's no commanding word. It's just a statement. So, in fact, I'm the God who took you out. But we take that as a statement, as an instruction. We start with a positive. So I think Rambam always starts with a positive. In fact, at the beginning of this book, he lists all the instructions as a sort of like an index, and he does it in two ways. And the first way he does it is, here's all the positives that you'll find in the Torah, and then here's all the negatives. And even though, as I showed you, many positives and negatives are correlated, he didn't bother with that. He just, here's all the positives, a whole list of 248, and then here's all the negatives, 365, and then he went back and he started presenting them together. So he always starts with the positive, and maybe because he's following the Christians didn't recognize that statement as an instruction because it's just a statement of fact, which is true. It's a statement of fact, but that fact itself is an instruction. Open your eyes and accept reality. Okay, so that's Rambam. Now, there's no Talmud from which he got this. That the Talmud never addressed. I think most of the time the Talmud doesn't bother with saying, "Hey, I want to tell you about instruction, and here's the verse." It's in the course of discussing some of the details. Say, well, how you know? It's like it'll quote a verse and say, well, because the verse said it this way. But they assumed everybody knew all the verses. So I'm just going to skip now to Shulchan Aruch. SA stands for Shulchan Aruch, which means the prepared table. It's 247 in that book, paragraph 1, and he repeats, it is a positive mitzvah to give charity as much as possible, and it is many times that we are charged with this positive mitzvah. Well, okay, right away he's changed something, because as much as possible is not what the Rambam said, and I don't know where he got this from, because we'll see that he's going to amend that statement in the future, but he's more sermonizing now. He's not, there's a difference between a law book, a legal book that's going to tell you here's what the law is, here's what the instructions are, here's how you do it, the manual, and a sales pitch. This would be great if you did this, you could do this, this would be great. So this guy's more of a sales pitch, and the Rambam is more of an instruction manual. And many times that we are charged, well, there's 3 times. He just summarizes it into many times, doesn't bother bringing down the verses. Then he says, there's also a prohibition from hiding one's eyes from it, as it says, do not harden your heart, do not close your hand from your impoverished brother, same verse that Rambam quoted. And he says, whoever does hide his eyes from it is called a worthless person, and it is as if he worshipped idols. Well, not in the verse. He wasn't called that in the verse. He's taking this from somewhere in the Talmud that Rambam hasn't introduced yet, because it's not part of the main instruction. I want to just give you the instruction. This is sermonizing. This is a sales pitch. Don't, you want to be called a worthless person. You want to be treated like an idol worshiper. So it's really just, exhorting somebody to behave themselves rather than laying out what the instruction is. He goes on to say, in this vein, furthermore, one should be extremely punctilious, very careful, for it is possible to cause bloodshed, in that the pauper seeking assistance may die if one does not provide assistance immediately, such as happened in the incidents with Nachum Ish Gamzu. Now, this is a story that's brought down in the Talmud, and I'm going to discuss it in note D below, but I'll first discuss some other things in this. So my first thing I want to point out is that M, and I was writing this back in the day, and I wanted to save my keepstrokes. So M stands for Maimonides, which is the Latin name for Rambam. And so Rambam begins his exposition on gifts to the poor with the broadest scope of the mitzvah rather than its minimum duty. So there's going to be, there was any instruction I give you, you could do the minimum, you could do the maximum. So he started with the maximum, and the minimum is going to explain later in paragraph 5. What did he say? Let's go back. Give charity to the poor according to the needs of each pauper. There'll be whatever he needs, provided you have charity, to the needs, whatever the needs are of the pauper, provided you have ample means. So if you have all those things, then that's what you should do. So left undefined for the moment are the terms, what is a pauper, what is charity, and what are your ample means, which is a part of that Dan was asking, what do I do? I don't have an overflowing bank account for my younger brother, and so on. Okay. In the first paragraph, M quotes 3 verses and relates them all to one single positive mitzvah among the 613. So the 3 verses, you can have 3, or in some places you have more than 3 verses. I remember I showed you the one about not cooking the kid in the mother's milk, the mixing meat and milk, had 3 verses as well. It's all one mitzvah, but we got 2 out of it, one not to cook and one not to even eat it. So here we have 3 mitzvahs, that just 3 verses rather, that support one mitzvah. Now with the middle verse, M apparently wishes to include a stranger and a sojourner, because that's what the verse is talking about. Now that would be a non-Jew who observes the 7 Noahide laws, among those to whom we are obligated to give charity. Some people will only give charity to people that are close by. My phone usually doesn't ring at all. We'll see later that there's the first duty is to those close to you, but he includes those that are rather distant. In chapter 3, paragraph 11, which we'll get to in quite a while, in chapter 3, paragraph 11 of the laws of acquisition and gifting, there's certain laws that govern when do you acquire something. Do you acquire it when you look at it, when you paid money for it, when you took it home, when you tried it out, borrowed it, let me take it for a test drive, whatever. When do you acquire something? And when is it a gift? Can you take it back? Can you renege on the gift and so on? So there's laws about that. So in that discussion, M uses this same verse to substantiate a mitzvah to support such a non-Jew. Somebody keeps the 7 Noahide laws. However, M definitely meant to exclude from the discussion here non-Jews who did not observe the 7 Noahide laws, meaning evil people. These he treats separately in paragraph 7 below. And my last note is, in the second paragraph, M relates the negative mitzvah that corresponds to the positive one, governing the duty of charity. Since he introduces both mitzvahs before presenting any details, it seems all the details that follow apply to both. I got to put into, well, I got both positive and okay, from here, having said that, from here, it is not clear at what stage the mitzvah would be transgressed. So in other words, both mitzvahs are both operable, the positive and the negative. Well, at what stage would it be transgressed? Logically, there are 3 situations from which one could avert his attention. He could be asked directly for a donation and refuse. Or he could observe a poor person seeking aid from others and turn away before the poor person can approach him directly. That would also be averting your eyes. Or he can notice that someone is in need, but not actively seeking a donation, and he fails to offer his assistance. So he knows the guy needs it, but he's not asking, and I'm not going to bother offering. So those would be 3 levels of averting his attention. Which one do we mean? Certainly, the first case would constitute a transgression of this negative mitzvah, since it contains the clearest example of averting one's attention. The guy asked and you said no. But what of the other 2 cases? It might be argued that since M inserts the condition that the pauper is requesting aid, when he opened up, go back to 1, give charity to the poor according to these reach pauper. Whoever sees a pauper requesting aid. So we're talking about requesting aid. So since he said that he's requesting aid, it seems that transgression requires that the pauper be actively seeking aid and not merely present the appearance of need. In other words, to be at fault, the potential donor must actively avoid an opportunity rather than just fail to notice one. Following this approach, the negative mitzvah would cover the first 2 cases, but not the third. In paragraph 9 below, M informs us of a duty to provide assistance even to one who avoids our help. That would suggest that all 3 cases are covered by the negative mitzvah. Remember, these details follow this setup that here are the mitzvahs, now I'm going to discuss them. So he does get to the point where he says, the guy is avoiding your help, you still have a duty to help him. However, it may be inferred from its context that paragraph 9 is referring only to the duties incumbent on the community, not those of an individual, who might be exempt from the negative mitzvah in such cases. So that introduces a whole new wrinkle. I'm just going to bring that up here, trying to work with the text as we go. He spoke about the mitzvah. Is the mitzvah on individuals, on each of us individually, or is the mitzvah on the community? That's another consideration. Then I say, on the other hand, M never seems to make the same distinction between the community and the individual that the Ramah makes. Now, the Ramah is, going back to the Shulchan Aruch that I mentioned earlier. So the fellow that wrote it is named Rabbi Yosef Karo. and he lived in the Sephardic community, Spain or south of Spain, and so he's writing for the entire Jewish community, and his is a region. There was another major population center of Jews in Northern Europe, France, Germany, Russia, that were sort of divorced. There wasn't that much traffic between them. And their main rabbi was called Rav Moshe Isserlis, which in short is called the Ramah. And he was so impressed with the text of the Shulchan Aruch that he said, we need this for our community too. And this is so well done that I'm not going to rewrite. I'm not going to write something like it. I can just, but I disagree with certain points he made. So I'll just insert a little note right into the text, and that'll guide my people the way I think they ought to be guided. And so he's called a Ramah, and his remarks appear in sort of in parentheses and in a different font in the Shulchan Aruch text, the Hebrew text. So I bring him down later. And in 250.01, which I haven't quoted him yet, he makes this distinction between individuals and communities. And in 257.10. So we're going to see this in paragraph 13 below. Now we get to the story of Nachum Ish Gamzu that was stated. Somebody died. It's related in the Talmud of Tanya 21a. That's one of the volumes. Nachum Ish Gamzu was leading 3 donkeys loaded with food. This guy was very famous. The long name actually means his first name was Nachum, which is consolation, and he's the man that always said, this too is for the best. He always said, whatever happened to him, this too is for the best. God's governing the world, and if something happens to me, it's going to be for the best. So he was a rather famous guy. He was leading 3 donkeys loaded with food and other goods when he was approached by a pauper for some food. Guy came up to him. We don't have too many people like this today that are literally starving. They who knows how long they've been eaten. We have systems. We'll talk about that later. But in those days, there could be somebody that was very poor and emaciated. So rather than giving him something immediately, Nachum asked him to wait until I unload the donkey. Before he could do so, the pauper expired from hunger. So from this, we learn that when somebody asks for food, even if he doesn't look like he's about to expire, you can't take a chance. You're dealing with life and death. Food is a matter of life and death. Give it to him right away. Just do it as fast as you can. So that's why he set up here that remember, it was the Shulchan Aruch say you have to be very careful because you might become involved in bloodshed. You don't want to be responsible for somebody dying. And we have this story that it happened with Nachum Ish Gamzu, so let that be a lesson to you. Okay. So that takes us to paragraph 3. And we have 2 minutes left to go, so I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions or further comments. Or anybody in the chat. Anybody on the other devices. Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Rabbi. Does anybody in social media have any comments so far for the Rabbi? I got James on Facebook and a few others on YouTube as well.
Yeah, remember, there's going to be a lot of detail that follows. This is the setup. So I'm introducing you to a close look at how the text developed and how the instructions proceed, and you'll let me know if you're
how it was argued out and ruled on.
What's that?
How it was argued out and ruled on.
In a way, yes.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that there's in our main cities, like our capital city of Victoria, Melbourne, and probably in other areas too, we have, and we should have it all over the North American area, professional beggars on the street that aren't really paupers, but make on government pensions, but make quite a killing on the begging field in the busy streets of Melbourne.
It's coming up in paragraph 7. We're not that far.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it might be when you said what you said to Dan. I thought, okay, mine's probably going to be in a similar category further down the track. Disseminating who is actually indeed and who isn't.
Right. We don't have
Yeah.
too many of those in Toronto. Um, I remember as a young,
Oh yeah, there was a W5 shows about one lady downtown Toronto. Every day at the end of the day, a big BMW pulls up and picks her up, and she makes nearly 200,000 a year.
right, there was one like that in England too, and that's where they'll gravitate towards the media, well, because it's so controversial, so they want to show up somebody, but well, I guess they also present stories of people that are lost things and lost their jobs and all kinds of terrible stories, tragic stories. And today we have the internet things, GoFundMe, as an example, where people very generously will help out somebody that has a terrible tragedy. And there's a lot of causes like that. So you have the whole range, and there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of situations, and they're nothing new. You'll see they're all discussed here. They're all trail, but he's got to set it up. He's got to tell you the parameters. So remember, in the first one, I pointed out he mentioned pauper, he mentioned charity, he mentioned ample means. We haven't defined them yet. He's going to have to define those terms. What do you mean by charity? What do you mean by a pauper? Who qualifies? And what ample means? What does that constitute? So we'll continue tomorrow, paragraph 3.
Rabbi, I cannot do tomorrow. I'm on with Hashi
Okay.
Skobak at this time tomorrow. So
All right. So we'll let this percolate. Then we'll be back here Thursday night.
Thursday night, I'm good till Thursday. Yeah.
Okay.
Thursday, same time.
And in the meantime, if anybody has a question or they would like to get an answer, they can send it to sbs447@gmail.com. That's SamBobSam447, 3 letters, 3 numbers, @gmail.com. And I'd be glad to log it and give you an answer right away, or show you how we're going to come to answer that.
Well, I look forward to hearing more for sure, because like I said, for me, I've had, when I find the kinder you are, the more come out of the woodwork, and you've got to have limits, and
you have to have guidance.
When it came to my little brother, all I could say is, I've paid thousands of dollars in the past to bail him out of problems that, as soon as you bail him out, he just recreates the same problem over again. And it's you gotta, when am I throwing good money at bad scenarios? And
you need an instruction manual. That's
for sure.
Okay, exactly the point.
All right, folks. So we are not on tomorrow night with Rabbi Schwartz. We will be back Thursday for our Zoom daily tomorrow night at this same time. I have meditation class with Hashi Skobak, Rabbi Michael Skobak's wife. Beautiful series with a lady that I need to just decompress myself, and so I think it's always a good class. We only do it once a month, and so it's a joy. But we will be back Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And if you want to participate in the Zoom, you can email Rabbi Schwartz at sbs447@gmail.com. That's sbs447@gmail.com. Or if you have any comments on today's material, I look forward to seeing where he takes it from here. So we're going to wind up for today until Thursday for Zoom Daily. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, everybody.
Good night.